Yo, everybody, welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics, brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week, it's time once again for our end of the year spectacular as my pal Brandon Burpee returns to the show to talk about the year that was in comics. Brandon, are you ready to make it happen?
Oh, I'm so ready to make it happen, Captain.
So, while the main event of this chat, and what I think probably most people are here for, is going to be us counting down our 20 favorite comics of the year, which we'll do at the end, I wanted to start, as per usual, with a broader look at the year that was. Brandon, I just want to start with the basics. This has been some crazy as hell last 2 years. We were just talking about how neither of us had been in an office in basically 2 years at this point. How was 2021 for you? Better than 2020? How's it looking?
I don't know, man. It depends on how you want to look at it. So the pandemic year honestly wasn't such a bad year for me. So I would say almost this year was on par, but not quite as amazing as last year. I had a great pandemic. But yeah, I would say it was a pretty good year. I mean, I think I've read more comics this year than I have in the last few years.
Yeah, it was pretty good for me. It's just kind of I don't know. It's weird. It's like, I think a lot of people had aspirations that 2021 would be like the end of all of this. And then, like, little did they know it was just going to keep going in perpetuity. And I don't know. I think it really depends on how real. I feel like I had resigned myself to understanding that it was going to be a weird several years. And I feel like I have a home office and I have this normal situation set up and I'm making it work as well as I can, Brandon. It seems like you are too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do what you can with the situation. I've been working from home as well. I think the only thing that's changed is maybe I'm smoking more weed.
Yeah.
I did see you this year, which was a very nice change of pace. I do want to ask, though, before we get to it, I feel like you're having an unusually good sports year. The Red Sox were in the ALCS. They ended up losing to the Astros. You have an incredibly elite Phoenix Suns squad. You have an undefeated Arizona Wildcats. You have the Arizona Cardinals battling for the number one seed in the NFC. Is this like the most successful all of your sports teams has ever been simultaneously?
I think the answer to that is yes, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. I would not know statistically or based on any fact, but as far as I can remember, yeah, without a doubt, I have not been this excited and or depleted in quite a while.
Which one's the most exciting for you?
By far, I'd have to say it would be the Suns, just because it's been so long since we've been good, and we're doing all this despite hashtag sell the team Sarver. So,
That is quite the change of pace. It is really interesting. Talk about having a up and down year. Robert Sarver owns the best team in the NBA, also has been reported to be a scumbag, and now everybody wants him to sell the team. Pluses and minuses. I guess everybody already wanted him to sell the team, right?
Right. There had been banners up in Arizona and stuff. But, the funny thing is, when I worked at Tesla, I worked with a lady who knew Robert very well, like flown on his personal jet, things like that. And I'm not going to lie, at the time, I tried to convince her continuously to give me any kind of dirt that would require him to sell the team. And all she could say was like, no, he's actually a really nice guy. So when all this came out, I was like, God damn it, if she'd just given me something.
No kidding. He could have been gone years ago. All right, no more sports talk because otherwise we're going to have like listeners yelling at us. But, you said you read more comics this year. What did you think of the year in comics? Did you read more comics because it seemed like there was more you were interested in? Or what was the reason for that?
I don't know why. I just did. I just found myself gravitating towards more titles. I will say it was more insular in the fact that it's more DC Marvel probably than ever. But that's definitely been a trend the last, forever. So that's not too surprising. But I think there was just more Batman titles. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, there were.
Yeah, there definitely were. But no, I think just overall, when I'm looking at Marvel and DC and what I read and like my wheelhouse, I felt like my wheelhouses were pretty strong. And then outside of that, I thought there were some aspects of both companies that drew me in that don't typically draw me in. So it got a little extra draw out of me.
So what does that mean? What were the aspects that drew you in?
I don't know, because I don't know how to say that without getting into my top 20.
I feel like we've always kind of had this, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, we're like Order and Chaos. I'm Blue Beetle and you're Booster Gold. We have like these different flavors that bring us in. I will say that I feel like I've pushed. I'm still reading a lot of Marvel and DC, like a lot. Like I love that stuff. But my list is going to be. I think our lists are going to be about as far from each other as they've ever been. And I don't think that one list is better or worse than the other one. I think it's just different. And I think that kind of speaks to like where comics are right now, which is just that there could be like 20 different types of readers that read completely different things. Like even if you had like 20 different comics you're each going to read and like have zero overlap and still have really good comics to read, which is very unusual for considering the history of comics.
I think that's the benefit to everybody listening then, because I know it's a benefit to me because our lists in the last few years especially haven't necessarily meshed up. We'll have, obviously some kind of X-Men something somewhere here and there. But in general, though, like Kaiju Max, that's a series that wasn't on my list that you put me on. I really enjoyed that. So I think it's a benefit to everybody for us to not have necessarily like the exact same list.
Mm-hmm. So you've been reading more comics, and I am interested. You used to read a lot of news sites. You used to read like solicitations on the regular, all that stuff like that. And 2021 has been a really crazy year. I did try to explain Substack to you last time. I'm not going to try to explain that again because nobody wants me to explain Substack ever. But it has been, like I said, it's been a lot of change in comics in the year. I'm super in the weeds. I know what's going on with all this stuff. I don't think you're paying quite as much attention to that stuff. You're just reading comics. Do you feel like you're aware that change is going on, whether it's with like distribution or ways that creators are funding their work or whatever? Or is that like completely outside of your world and you're just enjoying comics to enjoy comics?
I feel like, honestly, like this is the purest enjoying comics just to enjoy comics it's been for me since I picked up comics, maybe. Like, I don't keep up with too much news or reviews or anything. I'll try to keep up with like a CBR or somebody like that just to see when there's a new trailer for a movie. But as far as solicitations, like as a prime example, there's a title in my top 20 that got expanded beyond its initial offering. And I didn't know until like I picked up the issue and it said it was expanded. Like, so I'm so far beyond knowing, the ins and outs.
I know exactly what that comic is. I'm not going to say it because you're going to say it later, but I know what that comic is. I think it's fascinating. I sometimes wonder if I know too much about comics at this point. It's kind of like the dudes who constantly watch, like, I don't know, they watch Pardon the Interruption and then they watch like Around the Horn. And actually, I think that's reverse order. And then they watch like Stephen A. Smith yell at people on First Take and do all this stuff. And it's almost like they're so immersed in sports that they don't even enjoy it anymore. I'm not saying I don't enjoy comics, but I do think that like that immersion in the world of comics can change your relationship with it. And I imagine like I wouldn't be surprised if part of the reason why you read more is just because like you were just reading to read rather than like to keep up with things, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like there are books that probably could have made my list this year, but because I'm just reading at the whim of reading as opposed to like having to like consume everything month by month, there are books that don't make my top 20 because I just haven't made through a decent amount of them compared to what I was already reading because I read at such an odd pace now.
Yeah, I also read at a really odd pace. This is basically what I did for like the first 9 months. I just read my like regular single issue comics, and then I realized that I basically ignored all the comics that are like big deal graphic novels. And so for the last like 2 months and 2 weeks, I have basically been binge reading literally everything I could get my hands on. And it turns out that binge reading 350 page, really intense graphic novels is a really good way to stress yourself out before you go to bed, because some of the stuff is like wild stuff. I don't recommend it, Brandon. Reading at your own pace seems like a good idea to me.
Yeah, it's worked so far this year. It's like I said, it's made it a little bit more enjoyable for me because I'm not riding the wave of like trying to get ahead of like events and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I find myself behind those events anyway.
You're reading a lot of Marvel and DC. How are you feeling about Marvel and DC right now? Because I think DC is an interesting place coming off like the Infinite Frontier stuff. It seems like they're doing a lot of different things in a lot of different and interesting ways. And I like that. And then Marvel, like I actually just wrote a piece about how Marvel kind of feels like it's all over the place, mostly because there's a lot of good books, but none of them really feel connected in like the traditional shared universe sort of way. It's just like there's just like stuff happening everywhere that doesn't necessarily feel as if it connects. Like, a book that doesn't make my list. This is a spoiler for a book that doesn't make my list because there's like a million books that don't make my list. But I really like Kelly Thompson and Elena Casagrande's Black Widow. That book, I have no idea what Black Widow is doing in the rest of the Marvel universe, but it just feels like it might as well be a creator-owned book in some ways. It's just doing its own thing. Do you feel good about like the Marvel and DC universes right now, or are you just enjoying them as like isolated comics?
I feel pretty good about them right now, unless they're really trying to push me into like a big ass like event. Like Star Wars kind of burnt me this year a little bit with the big ole Bounty Hunter Wars thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too many books, man. Like I'm just not reading that much Star Wars. Like I got other books, so that kind of pushed me out a bit. But I think as long as you're not, putting 12 books into something, it's a little bit more doable.
Was that a shot at X of Swords last year?
Oh, without a doubt.
How are you feeling about the X-Men right now?
X-Men and me are like me and my ex-wife. It's a love-hate relationship. There's a lot more hate than there is love.
Oh, boy. So you're down on the X-Men right now.
Maybe I am. Maybe I'm just talking hyperbole to fuck up the 20.
Oh, my God. Your classic misdirection. It is interesting. Like, basically, it kind of seems as if the pandemic made, like, the X-Men line, like, kind of extend certain storylines or certain like books so they could get more out of it before they go over to like, so they're confident that everything is going to be operating properly before they move into the next phase. And like, it seems like the next phase is starting in March next year because they have this new like, Kieran Gillen and Lucas Wernick Immortal X-Men book, which is gonna be like a Quiet Council book, and there's gonna be a bunch of other like new books launch, or 4 new books launching. Like, what is it? Immortal X-Men. There's Legion of X. There's Knights of X, and then there's also going to be X-Men Red, like a new X-Men Red. They haven't announced what those ones are going to be, but it seems like they're saying like this is when like things are going to get crazy again. I enjoy the idea that it's going to happen because for me, to a certain degree, the X-Men books had been kind of stalled. Like I really like Inferno and I like Hellions a lot and I like Sword a lot, but like some of the rest of them I'm just completely out on. Other ones I'm just kind of like, I like these, I don't love these, and I don't know. I mean, I kind of miss like my like year-long superheat I had for X-Men. It was really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I lost a little bit of steam once Hickman was like, "Nah, I'm good."
Yeah, that's understandable. Okay, so before we get into it, I had a couple more questions to go, but I had a listener question. Elliot Metz asked, how do you decide which books to read in single issues and which to wait for the trades of? Do you just kind of always binge, or do you still try to keep up like month to month for certain titles?
Certain titles, I'm definitely I want to be in there month to month, but there are other titles that for me are definitely like very much so using the DC and the Marvel apps for reading, and so you're already off, delayed by a certain amount of time. So I just wait for those ones to binge.
I read all of Black Widow yesterday, and there was only 10 issues on there, and some of it was from last year, and I just like, I don't know. I have to admit, like sometimes Marvel Unlimited is just perfect for those binges on certain titles. Like I can't keep up with everything, and so it's nice to just jump in and be like, all right, I'm gonna read all of Black Widow, or all right, I'm gonna read, I don't know, all of Hellions. I've read all of Hellions in single issues, but at the same time, it's like that's another example I could use. I have to ask, what do you think about the new changes they made to Marvel Unlimited?
As far as like adding the new content, like all the new Marvel special comics.
No, like the organization's different too, and also like one thing that really annoys me, and this is such like a small thing to be annoyed by, when you have it on full screen, it keeps like if you're reading it on your iPad, it keeps the time and everything on screen even when you're reading. And so like if you take a screenshot and it's not a white page, you're just gonna have like time and your battery in the image, and that just it's a very small thing, but it really annoys me. I feel like they made it slightly worse when they didn't really need to.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying on that. Yeah, I did appreciate it probably like 2 updates ago more than I do now.
I will say, and when it comes to like how I decide which books to read in single issues and which to wait for the trades of, for me, it's quite often which ones I'm really excited for, or which ones I'm convinced will kind of come out with some sort of regularity. And then another determinant is it's like if a series launches with like a $7.99 first issue or something like that, I'm probably going to skip it unless there's a really compelling reason to do it. And I'll just read it later in like Marvel Unlimited or in trades, because it just doesn't make sense to me to like Marvel in particular tends to chase me away with like higher prices when it's just kind of unnecessary. Like I feel like I kind of got burned with like Way of X had like, I liked Way of X, and then it transitioned into this like Onslaught book that was just a one shot that really was just like the 6th issue of the series. And I think it was like $5.99, and it just seemed really unnecessary. And I really regretted it. And at that point, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to kind of dial it back on single issues when I don't really need to. Like, I can just wait on that. There's no reason to just, I don't know. I kind of wish Marvel was a little less aggressive when it comes to their pricing, when they're clearly just trying to make more money off their books randomly.
I'm with you on that entirely. When it's one of those books, that's a guaranteed Marvel Unlimited read.
Did you read the Onslaught book?
I did. And it was just, like you said, it was just the next issue.
Yeah, it was very strange. Okay, one other thing I want to bring up. This has been like an insane year for like movies and TV shows related to Marvel and DC stuff. Last time you came on, we tried to power rank the movies and shows we were most excited for the rest of the year. With the caveat that we're recording this right before Spider-Man No Way Home arrives. You're seeing it on Thursday, I'm seeing it on Saturday, and I have like a million muted keywords on Twitter to make sure that I like somehow escape without getting spoiled. It's not going to happen. I'm totally getting spoiled. What were your top 3 comic adaptations this year?
Top 3 this year? Whew, that's difficult. Are we talking movies, or are we talking TV show, or anything?
All of it.
Okay. Jesus. I would say WandaVision might be number 1. Number 2 would be Shang-Chi. Number 3 would be probably What If, just because of the potential.
That was a really bonkers one. It was very fascinating. Shang-Chi is number 1 for me. Why WandaVision for number 1? I remember you said that Eva really loved it. Was that part of it? Or is it like, I don't know, you just loved it?
Yeah, so I actually watched the first few episodes by myself because the kids were at their mom's place. And then I didn't get immediately hooked. I felt like the pace wasn't going fast enough for me. Like it was time to get beyond the black and white. And then when I rewatched it with the kids, it was like they were hooked. Eva especially loved it. And so it definitely got me rehooked into it. And then just after watching it through like a second time, like just the nuances of the show just really hooked me out. It just is a very well done, like if you like sitcoms or you understand sitcoms, like the love that it puts towards them. And then kind of, I don't know, I thought it was a really special show, honestly.
Yeah, I really like it. It's really good. Loki would probably be one of the top 3 for me also. I have a very radical take on the third one. I don't even know if you saw this. I actually really liked Eternals. I feel like I might be one of the only people who actually really liked Eternals. But I don't know. When I was thinking about it, it's interesting. Like, I don't know how much I love the Disney Plus shows so far. Like, I'm kind of a little bit more mixed on them than I normally am with the movies, because I always feel like there's like 1 or 2 episodes that kind of tank the shows for me a little bit. And I don't know. It's fascinating. I'm a little mixed on it. Like, I really like WandaVision was really good. So far, Hawkeye's fine. The What If I thought was good, although it at certain times kind of seemed like it was more just like a kind of fake out pilots for other shows, which it seems like it probably will be, because I think Captain Carter is getting a show and Marvel Zombies is getting a show. And then what was the other one? Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier was fine. I just like, I'm a little bit like less excited about it when they kind of seemingly drag out the stories and don't necessarily like pay off. How are you? Do you like the shows a lot?
Bro, I love the shows. I love the shows. Full on chubs. I love them. I love what they're doing because I feel like in the long term we're building to the young Avengers, man. Like that seems to be the subplot of all of this, and I'm so 100% there for that.
That is 100% happening because who do we have so far? We have Kate Bishop. There's who do we have? Stature showed up in well, it's obviously in Ant-Man and everything like that, and then yeah, the I still like the Halloween episode of WandaVision was so amazing. Just seeing the twins or the brothers in their like actual costumes. Like the Wiccan one was great.
Yeah, and so slowly they've been putting this all together. So I mean, it's got to be coming. So I'm pretty stoked for that. And then on top of it, I love like I just geek out on these shows that when we were kids, dude, we couldn't even imagine they would do stuff like this.
I know there's a part of me that kind of feels like I'm just like being like unnecessarily fussy about it because it's just I don't know. Like I remember we've talked about this before, but I remember when I was a kid that I was just like absolutely like losing my mind over the fact that like X-Men was coming out and I was so hopeful it was going to be not terrible because there was such a high probability for it being terrible. And now, like in today's standards, you could make a pretty good argument. Well, actually, you might even be able to make an argument back then that it wasn't that great, but at the same time, I loved it all the same. I don't know how well the first X-Men movie has aged, but at the same time, I still love it.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I don't know how well the first one's aged either because I've watched it a few times and maybe not so great, but I think the second one aged pretty well for sure.
It really did. And now, a quick word from one of off-panel sponsors. Macroverse is a next-generation digital comics platform, and one with an astonishing number of comics, with currently over 50 series from over 100 creators on their app, with a 5-star rating both on Apple and Google's app stores. Download the app and binge all their titles, including the Eisner-nominated Remind from Jason Brubaker, Lisa K. Weber's Hex 11, which has been described as Harry Potter meets Blade Runner, or the new queer supernatural adventure series Husk that launches on November 1st. It's just $4.99 a month to subscribe to Macroverse, with proceeds directly supporting the creators on the platform. Keep an eye on the future of Macroverse 2, as 2022 is going to bring an epic upgrade that offers a new level of digital collectability and more, with early adopters able to sign up for more information at macroverse.com. And now, back to the show. All right, let's get into our top 20s. For listeners that have never listened to this episode before, this is Brandon and I breaking down our favorite comics, graphic novels, or whatever. It can be anything. It can be a web comic. It can be, I don't know, like a particularly good zine you found, whatever you want it to be. Only rule was they had to come out in 2021. We're going to go back and forth snake draft style where one of us goes first before the next one goes twice, etc., until we're done. We're going to start with honorable mentions. Brandon, do you want me to go first or do you want to go?
Man, your dealer's choice.
I will go first. Okay, so I'm going to do my honorable mentions. The 5 final cuts I had were, let's see. First, this was like a swap that I made last night. It's Sword, the book from Al Ewing and Valerio Schiti and a number of other creators or artists whose names I do not recall right off the top of my head. Love that book. The only problem I had with that book is I felt like it kept getting like absorbed into all these other events, and so far it's had 10 issues, and I think it's been like half of its run has been connected to another story that it's not necessarily direct. I mean, it makes sense that it's related to it, but at the same time, it keeps getting roped into this stuff. To their immense credit, the creative team has made it work really well, and like I love the Mysterium stuff and how that's like expanded or like connected the X or the mutants with like the larger cosmic universe and everything like that. Al Ewing has done an amazing job with the cosmic universe stuff. Another one is Homesick Pilots from Casper Wingard, Dan Waters, and Aditya Bidikar. It's an Image series that's actually, I think you would really love it. It's kind of like punk, ghosts, and superhero stuff. Almost kind of like Gundam stuff. Just like big, crazy action, big emotions, punk music, all this stuff. I feel like you'd really enjoy it. It is so well done, and like the creative team does a very remarkable job of fusing all of their talents into making kind of like this Voltron of like a creative team where everyone feels like they're moving in the same direction. Another honorable mention is Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton. It's Kyle Starks and Chris Schweizer. It is a hilarious comic about 6 former sidekicks of this dude who was like the worst person in Hollywood, but it was also a big star. And Trigger Keaton, that guy, gets murdered. And so these sidekicks want to solve the murder, even though they hate his guts and are glad he's dead. And it involves a stuntman war and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's hilarious. I absolutely love it. Firepower, which is like the best non-superhero book that I read this year. It is it's non-Marvel and DC superhero book. It's Robert Kirkman and Chris Samnee doing amazing things. Chris Samnee's so amazing. I just absolutely love him. And then Lee Lai did a graphic novel called Stone Fruit, and it is a very affecting, very, very like, I don't know. I just really connected with it and like its relationships in the book. Well, that's actually like a common theme in a lot of the comics that make my list this year. Is there's a lot of like relationship stuff in it. I think I'm getting to like, I feel like I like connect with a lot of sad stuff these days. I don't know what that says about me, Brandon, but that's the thing that's happening. What are your honorable mentions?
Do you need a hug, David?
Are you offering?
I'm always offering, baby.
Get on a plane, Brandon.
Did I make this weird?
No, absolutely not. Appropriate amounts of weird.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. So I didn't have quite as long of a list. But for me, I had 3 titles that were like real close, but just didn't quite make it. And in no particular order, one of them is Suicide Squad Get Joker by Brian Azzarello and Alex Maleev. That was just a fun, inappropriate book that I really enjoyed. And it just didn't make my list for whatever reason, but it was a lot of fun.
I was really interested in that book.
Did you read it or no?
No, I didn't get a chance to read it. It's like, it's interesting because that creative team and that idea seemed like a really good one. But it's just like, I'm not normally that big of a Suicide Squad fan. So I was just like, I'll get to that one later. I feel like I need to get to it now that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, I'm not typically a big Suicide Squad person either, but that changed this year. Foreshadowing. Another one of my just not made it's were I Am Batman by John Ridley. That book has been hot fire. There just hasn't been enough of it yet for it to make my top 20, but if it continues the pace that it's at right now, it'll for sure make it onto my next year's list. And then my third and final one was Primordial by Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino. I just, whenever you put those two together, it's a guaranteed take my money. And so for them to go off and be able to do whatever they want to do and do it with space creatures, based in history type stuff. My kid is all about this, Dex. He's all about this. So it's a fun one that him and I can share too. So that was the one that just very, very, very closely did not make my list.
That almost made mine too. I really, really like that book. It's so interesting. It's like, I love the story of Laika already. I actually didn't know the story about, what was it? Abel and Mrs. Baker were the monkeys?
Yeah.
Yeah. I really, when I was reading that and I was just like astonished by not much happens in those like issues when you really think about it. I mean, I beyond like the whole like Laika and 2 monkeys from very famous like space or like the first animals in space, basically. Well, not basically in Laika's case, them being like abducted by aliens effectively that's obviously a lot that happens, but it's just like that comic really sits with you. It like really like the thing that Lemire and Sorrentino are so good at is just like they can do these things that just like kind of light your brain on fire as you're reading them. That's a really, really good book.
Yeah, and the best part is it can still make it on next year's list because there's only been a few issues.
Yeah. Jump into 20. What's your number 20?
All right, number 20 for me is from a fairly small publisher and from a writer who probably people don't really know all that well. But it's Justice League Last Ride by Chip Zdarsky. Have you heard of him?
Are we talking about the like? No, I don't think so. Interesting.
Yeah, he's easily my dark horse this year.
I like it. What? So I actually didn't read that. I know that Chip had said basically that like he was given like carte blanche to like use whichever characters he wanted. So he wanted to use like the Wally West that was jokey, not mopey. So like what is that? Like what do you like about that book so much?
I like the best part about this book is exactly what you said. It was like they told him do whatever you want, and he just did it. So you get a lot of his humor. You also get a lot of his in-depth storytelling, like you get in books like Daredevil and stuff. But it's just him and like Dark Side and just ridiculousness, like taken to the full level. And yeah, I don't know. For me, it was a book this year where I just wanted to really just dive into something that really had no basis in anything else and just have like a wicked ride with it. And he crushed it with this book. And the art was, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with the art. Miguel Mendonca.
I don't know.
But the art was phenomenal in this book. And the two of them storytelling together was just, again, it was just so much fun.
I need to get on that. I actually didn't read that one either. Even though I love Chip stuff, apparently I don't love it that much because I'm clearly a hater. My number 20 is a comic that I think you would like a lot. It's called Stray Dogs. It's from Tony Fleeks and Trish Forstner, as well as Brad Simpson and Tone Rodriguez. And okay, so on the cover, like Forbes has like this line where they say it's like, what do you get when you crossbreed Silence of the Lambs with All Dogs Go to Heaven? Well, you get stray dogs. And that's not entirely wrong. It's like drawn in a style that's very much like an animation style. It kind of feels like it's like Don Bluth or something like that. And it's done like Trish Forstner's art is like so good in this book. The thing I really love about it is the fact that it's not just done for like kind of kitschiness. It's done in a sense, in a way that like actually really connects you emotionally with the story. But basically the gist of it is, spoilers for Stray Dogs if you don't know what happens in it. But basically these dogs all live in this house. And it turns out that the tie that binds is their original owner was killed by their current owner. So basically they are owned by a serial killer who has killed all of their respective owners. And it's about them trying to save themselves. And I feel like one of the big changes for me over let's say the past decade is I've become like an incredible, insane animal person. And it's not just because I got cats, but also just because that's how I am, I think. But this comic weirdly was not as stressful as I expected it to be because I figured animals in peril would totally wreck me. But instead, it's just like I was really invested in their survival. And it's a great like horror thriller animal book, which is not something I think they invented a genre with this book. I don't even know what you call it, but I think you would like it.
Yeah, I'd have to check that out.
Number 19 for me is a DC Black Label book. It's Catwoman Lonely City by Cliff Chiang. One of my key rules for my list is always that I have, like, each comic that's on my list has to have at least 3 issues out. This comic has 1 issue out. However, I have read the second issue and I can fake my way into counting because both issues are at least double sized. So it's like a gigantic 2 issues. And I just love it. It is so great. It's like taking place basically like 10 years after Catwoman went to jail for, I think amongst other things, killing Batman, which apparently they frown upon in Gotham. And it's basically like taking place after all superheroes have been and vigilantes have been shut down. Harvey Dent's the mayor. There's like all kinds of like crazy. It's very reflective of the way that the world is today in our world, but told through the prism of Catwoman and all these like very colorful supporting characters. Like Killer Croc is amazing in it, and he's one of like the main characters in the book. It is just, I mean, Cliff Chiang writes it, draws it, colors it, letters it. I mean, he just absolutely crushes it. That's what he does beyond like having all those different roles. It's just a phenomenal achievement. And like if the final issue, the 3rd issue had been out, or if I'd even read it, I probably would have it much higher up on the list. But it's just, it was a good year. And honestly, it's like this book being at 19, even with so few issues, is really kind of shocking for me just because I love it so much. And it also has like the single greatest KG Beast reference that's ever existed in the second issue, and I can't wait till people read it. What is your number 19?
My number 19, and you may have already guessed this one, based on one of my hints earlier, is Swamp Thing by Ron V and Mike Perkins. That was a book that I did not know was getting expanded, and I was very, very excited to see it, where it said it got expanded out to 16 issues. This is the most I've enjoyed Swamp Thing since, oh God, I don't even know how long. When was the last time we got a big relaunch on this, David?
Snyder?
Yeah, it's got to be Snyder, I guess, probably. But I liked where they took this, and they moved it off of going from a character we already know to introducing us to a new character, and getting that whole backstory. And I got to say, like, the art in particular for me by Mike Perkins is like, for me, a Swamp Thing book has to have a type of aesthetic that draws me in as it being like an environmental type. It's got to have that overbearing feeling in general. And Mike Perkins' art does such a good job of bringing that like really horror overbearing element to it. And so, it looks beautiful. And then of course, Rom V, the writing, I can't go enough into them as well, because we'll be talking about them a little bit more later. But the story just is so engaging, and it's one of those books that I'm not surprised to see that DC had to extend out, because if I had known anything about the pulse of anything, I would have asked for it to be extended. So.
Well, Rom's like original plan was for it to be, I think it was originally planned to be like 2 seasons or whatever, but I think they were just like, just keep this one going, like, do 6 more issues. I do want to say I like totally agree with you on Mike Perkins, because he's always been an artist that I've been kind of like mixed on. Like sometimes I think he did some like Captain America, like Winter Soldier type stuff for Marvel. And I always liked it for like the spy stuff, but I always kind of felt like he was kind of pigeonholed as like this grounded artist. And on Swamp Thing, his stuff is so atmospheric. Like there's so much presence to it. And I think he does a really, really good job on that book. So good call by you, shouting out the Mike Perkins there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought he did a great job. The two of them combined just made this book without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm hoping they get 6 more on top of this new 6. All right, so my 18th then?
Yep.
All right, number 18 for me is X-Force by Benjamin Percy and Joshua Cassara. I hope I'm saying that correctly. That book to me has been one of my favorite X-Men books. Obviously, it made it in my top 20. I love everything that's happening with Beast and how he seems to be getting a little more fucked up continuously. We're getting a little closer to the Dark Beast type stuff. Also, I'm a huge fan of like Cecilia Reyes. Obviously she came in around the same time as Maggot, so we've got much love there, and she gets a lot of love in this book. And I just like, this is another book where the art for me is so big. The atmospheric value of it, like there's in issue number 16 where they're underwater like fighting and shit like that, and they've got like the god damn it, what's it called, the Krakoan armor on it, and then all of a sudden pops in Namor. Like just the way that art looks, the way it's so dark and dynamic, they killed it on that. And just the overall vibe of like being the covert team of the X-Men. I don't know. I love this book a lot.
So what is Beast doing? I've heard that like everyone's down on Beast. I'm not reading X-Force, so I don't know what's going on. Like, is he just going full Dark Beast?
It feels like it. He's constantly asking for like samples of things. Like he's not too far off from being sinister at this point.
Okay, I have to ask. Obviously, it's like given the Dark Beast of it all, it's like clearly like Henry McCoy is capable of that. But when you're reading that, does that track for you?
Oh, it super tracks for me. Like Dark Beast has always to me seemed like the only eventuality. Like this is a guy who's so consumed with knowing what he needs to know and like putting the tests out there that he caused himself to look all hairy in the first place. So why wouldn't he push it further and further until he gets to that point?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it is interesting to see. Sometimes when people are like, Beast is so terrible, I'm like, what is Beast doing in X-Force? But it seems like it's working for him. I mean, working for him in the sense and it's interesting to read, not in the sense that it's actually perhaps a good direction for our good doctor, Hank McCoy.
Yeah, I like it. I'm cool with some Dark Beast.
Okay, number 18 for me is an Image series called The Silver Coin. It's a very fascinating book because the constant in it is the artist, Michael Walsh, who does the line art, colors it, and letters it. And he does not write it, though. That's one of the fascinating things about it. Each issue is written by a different person. So the writers on the book so far have been Jeff Lemire, Chip Zdarsky, Joshua Williamson, Kelly Thompson, Ed Brisson, and Ram V. And so each issue is written by a different person. And Michael Walsh did write one issue. I actually think it was the best issue. But basically the gist of it is it's a horror series where the main character, the thing that you follow, is a silver coin that gives people luck and kind of changes their lives, but also destroys their lives. And it's always a one shot, basically tracking what happens with these people and their relationship with the silver coin. Long story short, don't get the silver coin because you're going to die. It's bad, 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 bad. Don't get the silver coin. But I don't know. I love it. The only thing I really don't love about this book is in the first issue, which was written by Chip Zdarsky and, Michael Walsh doing his thing. It's like about a guy in a band who wants like great fame and everything like that. And he finds the coin. He ends up using it as like a pick. And Walsh depicts him in the issue as like basically destroying his fingers slowly but surely with guitar strings. And it is like an image that I regret seeing in my life, Brandon. It harms me. It makes me very upset.
Sounds tasty.
Okay, number 17 for me is there's this guy named Jesse Lonergan who did this comic called Hedra that was on my list last year, and he did like this little zine comic called Faster, and it's just like this little, I don't even know if he called it self-produced. I don't even know who produced it. It was like Booglian Press. I apologize if I mispronounced the publisher's name, but it is such a cool little comic. It's not even that long, but it's basically just like Jesse Lonergan wilding out and having a lot of fun with his art. And it's the story of I don't even know how to describe it. It's like this, it feels like, what if like Otherworld was really into F1 racing? And he tells the story of like a race amongst these people and like the sabotage that takes place and like a showdown between the top racer in the world, the 5 times world champion Kona DeMille, and like Molly Vox, the 5 times runner up. And in this like very small book, it's just like, I don't know, like 20 or 30 pages or something. He tells like this really like just furiously like driving story that like just hooks you and it introduces you to all these colorful characters and also like connects you with the arc and like connects you emotionally with all the story. And I don't know. I mean, I'm just like amazed by what this guy can do with very limited space. There's very few people who are more interesting to me as a creator than Jesse Lonergan, but that comic totally rules. Like, it's just awesome art, a great idea. The execution is fantastic. Also, the paper stock rules. So I'm all about it. Very good book. What is your number 17?
Dude, paper stock goes a long way.
It does. It does.
Yeah, don't sleep on paper stock. Number 17 for me is Teen Titans Academy. That is by Tim Sheridan and Rafa Sandoval. I really enjoyed what they've done with this book. This is not a book that I thought would end up on my list if you'd asked me a year ago. But everything they've done with like Red X and Red X trying to sabotage what's going on, and trying to corrupt, like the Bat Kids of the Teen Titans Academy. It's just been a fun book, and you get these glimpses of like what things could be, and how things have been, and you get the original Titans and their connections and how they basically rub off on these kids. And yeah, I thought it was a great book, and I'm really, really, really looking forward to seeing what's going on with Red X and maybe getting a reveal on the identity on that one.
Didn't Red X like originate in the like Teen Titans animated series?
Yeah, and it was Robin.
Oh,
Yeah. So I don't know how it's gonna play out with these though.
I don't know. I think that'd be a really interesting thing to find out. I have to admit that character has really, really good design. Like he's a cool looking character.
Wicked cool looking design.
What is your number 16?
All right, number 16 for me is a book that you touched on earlier that you said did not make your list, but did make my list. And that is Black Widow by Kelly Thompson and Rafael De La Torre.
And Elena Casagrande?
Oh, good call. Yes, sir. This book is just amazing. I love everything that's built from the point where, spoilers, I guess. I'm so far behind. I assume everybody else is. And if you know what I know, then you don't know shit. But I love everything that's built off of her losing her family and having to move forward from that. Like, it's made such a great emotional pull for the book. And then you throw in just her relationships that she's built with the other, Spider Women, Black Widows, and all of that. And then the art is just phenomenal. The fight scenes, the covers. I'm a huge fan of covers. Burpee's Got You Covered was my thing at one point or another. And the covers for this book consistently are just so gorgeous. So overall, top to bottom, like I couldn't pass this book up.
I gotta say, like the art on that book between like the interiors with like Elena Casagrande is like her like big action spreads are like so astonishingly cool. And like Rafael De La Torre, if you're gonna have a like fill-in artist for Elena Casagrande, you couldn't possibly ask for a better fill-in than him because he feels like Casagrande with a little bit more grittiness to him. And that really like works for the book. But then like the covers, like you're saying, Adam Hughes is your cover artist. I mean, damn, that is such an amazing combination.
Yeah, they didn't skimp on that book at all. It's a top tier book.
I do have to say, like the family stuff, it's really interesting how they've worked that in there and like made it a constant drumbeat, but not constantly made it about it. Where it's like, it's something that continues to haunt the widow, but at the same time, it's like she keeps doing her thing. And it says so much about the character that she's able to do that. And it fits with her character so well. I'm like, I don't know. I'm very impressed by the book. It was definitely something that I considered. And it's such a good read when you read, like reading on Marvel Unlimited, when I binged it, I was just, I don't know. I was like floored by it as I was reading it because it just like it fits together so nicely.
Yeah, and she does such a good job, like you said, of just like compartmentalizing everything to try to move forward.
They're very good at working like the relationships with her and like Hawkeye and Bucky and stuff like that. Like the one person she would trust with her family was Bucky, and so like Bucky constantly is just like, I am going to protect your family, even if it means protecting them from you, which is like very. I don't want to say mean, but at the same time, like it's like a very cold thing to do, but exactly what she needs. It does a really good job with characters.
100% agreed.
Number 16 for me is Once in Future by Kieran Gillen, Dan Mora, and Tamara Bonvillain. It is a story about, let's see, on one level, it's about basically people who are like hunting Arthurian legends and ensuring that they don't end up in our real world. When it's basically about stories coming to life and about them kind of taking over our real world in some capacity. And it features characters like King Arthur and Merlin and like Beowulf and all kinds of other random, like, storytelling, fable type characters. And, but it's also like a family drama. It's basically like the people who are destined or designed to like save the world from these varying like stories coming and like kind of ruining our world is like basically a single bloodline. And it turns out that if you're like destined to do that type of stuff, and if the main person who does it is a elderly woman who has spent her entire life using her family to use them to channel these stories, it can lead to some very not so happy places for that family. But it's done so well. It's done so well. And it's basically like the equivalent of, I just said this, I just had Kieran Gillen on the podcast, and I said it's like Kieran Gillen's like 1980s action movie, and like Dan Mora's art is amazing, and Tamara Bonvillain is so incredible at like coloring Mora's art. I'm so happy that they work together like all the time now. But it's like one of the most fun books that I'm reading right now, and it seems like every time I think like the maximum amount of insanity has been reached in it, that it keeps finding a new level. And that's both really impressive, and also I just love it because I guess I just like insane things, insane and sad things. So I don't know what's going on with me in my life, Brandon, but that's where I'm at these days.
We all go to a little crazy sometimes, baby.
All right. Number 15 for me is we're going to have Chip Zdarsky show back up. It's Stillwater from Chip Zdarsky, Ramon Perez, Mike Spicer, and Russ Wooten. This is such a good book. It's about a town called Stillwater, and it is a place where as long as you are within the city or the town limits, that you cease to age and cease to be like capable. Basically, you can get injured, but it immediately heals itself. Everyone becomes Wolverine, basically. And, Wolverine, except for no claws, and also, I think, like, a considerably worse person, typically, which is not ideal. It is an incredible series that has continued to go into some very surprising directions. I remember reading a letter from this one person that they wrote in a letter into the letters column, and they were talking about how like it was going in some cliche directions, and then like the next issue it went in a completely different direction. And I just kind of always wondered what that person's reaction was to that, where they thought they had outthought the book, and then the book completely turns on them. And I just love it. I love Chip's writing. Chip is such a fantastic writer, and Ramon's art is fantastic. But the issue that stands out for me the most, and I imagine a lot of Stillwater readers didn't actually read it. Skybound did this series called Skybound X this year, where it was like a 5-issue story or a 5-issue series where they just highlight the best stuff that Skybound had ever done, like Walking Dead and a number of other things, et cetera, et cetera. And Stillwater had a story in there, and the story that they told in there is basically it's about this one character's cat, and how once all the animals realized that they didn't need people anymore because they don't need food anymore in this town, because that's another thing that happens is like you no longer need food. Basically, this is the one animal that's stuck with its owner. All the other ones just like left because they're like, you're not going to give us food. We don't need food. So we're just going to run around and do what we want. This one cat stayed with him. And it was like it's basically about like the disillusionment of the relationship between this one character and his cat. And Brandon, I told you animals affect me a lot, but I read it and I was just like very upset with Chip for writing that. I was very upset. And I loved it, though. It's such a good story. Like, the whole series is fantastic. I mean, it's not just one really amazing cat story. It's action-packed. It's very dramatic. It has, like, amazing political machinations. And the scariest character in it is a child who has been a child for, decades. It turns out I don't think people like being children for decades. I don't know a lot about that because I don't think that's a real thing. But it seems like it goes poorly for the kids who stay that long. And I kind of get it.
I don't know. I'm willing to give it a shot.
Do you think you would be a good eternal child?
Oh, hell yeah. Give me a good sugar mama.
I guess in some ways. I mean, I feel like I like the exact same things I did when I was a kid. So I maybe more sad things and insane things, I guess. But for the most part, a lot of my interests kind of align. So I guess I would be a pretty good eternal child.
Yeah, same here. Give me some pro wrestling, some comic books. I'm set.
How is the pro wrestling space right now?
AEW, man, it's been fire. It's been absolute fire. WWE's been garbage still. That hasn't changed since last year.
When I was at Emerald City Comic Con, I went out to breakfast at this place that I really love that has amazing breakfast burrito with fried chicken in it. It's fantastic. I was out with my friend Sherry, and we were sitting there, and John Cena showed up.
What? You could see him?
Oh, God. So many people have said that to me, and I didn't know what it was. Is that must be a thing that he says during wrestling, right?
Yeah, that's his whole trademark. You can't see me, and then he waves his hand in front of his face.
Well, I did, in fact, see him, and he also apparently has good taste in breakfast. So good job by you, John Cena. That is my wrestling story for you. I saw John Cena. He's much smaller than I expected.
That's what she said.
Oh, poor John Cena catching strays in this podcast. Damn. All right, what is number 15 for you?
No, I'm sure John Cena's doing just fine for himself. Number 15 for me is Nightwing by Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. I am a big Dick Grayson fan, and for a while there, Dick Grayson was getting disrespected on a monthly basis under another name and title. But we finally have seen him come back into his full grace. I think this book has been a lot of fun because it's been, for me at least, it's been comparable to kind of like the Hawkeye run with David Aja and Matt Fraction that's getting aped so hard on the TV show. And it had that kind of vibe to it. We're bringing him back to like a basics level. And I've really enjoyed that. The covers again on this book have been phenomenal as well. I talked about how the covers are a big touching point for me. But overall, for me, this was just a fun book. I thought it was a heartfelt book. I like seeing Dick get back to basics and becoming what he should be, as opposed to like a bullet lodged in his head and he can't remember who he is type nonsense. So,
are you disrespecting Rick Grayson?
Big time disrespect. Big time disrespect.
Oh, the Rick Grayson era. What a classic era for the character. I gotta say, Bruno Redondo's art is so incredible. That guy is amazing.
Yeah, it's just super dynamic art. Like it's just really fun panel to panel, following it along. It's so much. It's a joy to watch and just watch it unfold.
So one of the upcoming issues for Nightwing is going to be Bruno Redondo, if I understand it correctly, basically drawing the entire issue as one continuous sequence. And like they like showed some pages, like one of the editors like laid down with the pages just to show. It seems like one of the most like astonishing achievements you could possibly have in superhero comics, while also like basically taking everything you can to try to kill Bruno Redondo. But apparently he is not harmed by these things. He is just empowered by them. So good job by you, Bruno Redondo. I will say it was one of my last cuts. It was another book that I felt like got a little harmed by getting connected to like events, like whatever it is, Fear State. Like Fear State, I was just like, man, like if we were still on the Bruno Redondo beat and continuing with like I really liked the whole Alfred Pennyworth like charity thing that he was doing. Like if that stuff was really interesting to me. I think the character stuff is like they're doing a good job with the Fear State stuff too, but it just feels so much more ordinary compared to the other stuff. So I guess that's kind of like, you know, what you have to deal with when you're talking about superhero comics. But at the same time, I just want more Bruno Redondo and like nice charity stuff. Is that so much to ask? Also a dude who like steals people's hearts. That's also not so nice.
Oh, I don't know if that's too much to ask for. That sounds lovely.
What's your number 14?
My number 14 is Infinite Frontier, mini-series, limited series, call it what you want, by Joshua Williamson and I'm going to butcher this so bad. Zermanico. I'm going Zermanico, and I apologize, obviously, if I'm getting this wrong, which I more than likely am. But I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed the idea of having like an interdimensional, multiversal Justice League team comprised of, the terrible dad Batman from Flashpoint and Superman, President Superman. And then somewhere along the way, it got tied up with Black Lanterns. And as somebody who's a big big Green Lantern fan, I was all about it. And then it brings back a Ginger. I'm not going to give too many spoilers. And as a Ginger, I'm very much enrolled in that as well. So it just hit a lot of points for me. And then it's rolling over into its own series coming up here, which I'm also very much so stoked for. I just think the world of Joshua Williamson, honestly, like his Flash run was so good. And Infinite Frontier was a book that I wasn't certain I was going to pick up, but with his name on it, I was all in on it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just read that is Maps Mizuguchi in that book. Did you ever read Gotham Academy?
I did not read Gotham Academy.
Okay. I was just looking on the Wikipedia about Infinite Frontier. I had no idea that Maps is in it. Maps is a character from that book, and apparently is like getting involved as Robin in some capacity, and that just blows my mind. But that's cool. I mean, it is interesting. Like, I like the idea that there's kind of this series that acts as like the backbone for all the like changes that they were making for like the DC universe, and getting Josh to do that just seemed like it was a good fit. It seems to me that like that's almost like the architecture for like the DC universe. So if you buy into that, you're probably buying into all the DC stuff.
Yeah, I just think the one thing that this book is lacking is if you want like a multiversal, time approved Justice League, you need Booster Gold.
Absolutely. I thought you were going to say Maggot, and I was like, I don't think that's possible, but I guess it is an Infinite Frontier.
Yes, if we could just go ahead and combine those universes, also Maggot.
All right, what is your next book?
All right, my next book is a book that has graced my list for more years. Well, I don't know about more years, but probably about as many years as we've had this list, and that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It has been a book that is a perennial favorite of mine. It's a book that's seen a lot of changes. We've seen creative teams kind of come and go. In recent years, last couple years, we've seen Sophie Campbell really take over and do the story and the art and really push things forward as far as the kind of the Mutant Town era. I don't know what it's really called because I don't keep up with it online, but for me, it's the Mutant Town era. And everything that's going on there, and with the mutanimals and the kind of the civil war they've had there on how to approach everything. I think Sophie Campbell's really done a great job with this era of the book, and really giving it a different flavor than what they had for a while there, which was your standard, Shredder, the Foot Clan, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they fight. And how you've had in recent years like rock concerts and things like that as a more of a focal point for fighting. So I think Sophie Campbell's really done a great job of pushing this book in a different direction. I am interested to see it go back a little bit forward to more of the Splinter and Shredder and things like that. But for 2 years or plus, I think now at this point that she's been on the book, it's been crazy enjoyable, and it hasn't stopped this year.
Okay, so if like let's say the two flavors of comics, like kind of superhero / licensed stories like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, do you like to have like a balance between kind of like the old flavors like Splinter and Shredder and all like the stuff we kind of know to expect and everything like that? Do you prefer that, like the old school favorites, or where people try to do something new? Because it seems like Sophie Campbell is thriving while bringing something new to the book, and it seems like you're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, like what Sophie Campbell's brought to the book is not what I was initially excited for, or what I probably would have hoped for. So for me, it's I kind of like what I like, and I can get caught into that rut of just enjoying that type of stuff. But sometimes, if the team that you've been working with leave, and you're stuck with something else. And when I say stuck with something else, I don't mean that in like a negative connotation. It's just, this is what you have now. If you want to read the book, you need to read the book. And I did that. And it really was just such a fresh change on the book that I almost forgot the fact that we weren't getting, your normal Splinter versus the Foot Clan versus so on and so forth.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's like not always radical decisions sometimes can be like kind of scary at first. It's like I think some people were upset with Hickman's changes initially for the X-Men, but then I think that they read like 2 or 3 issues of House and Powers and all of a sudden they're like fully on board. Sometimes change is scary for like, I'm not you necessarily, but like the broader idea of like superhero fans and like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans and things like that. But I don't know. I think it's cool, and sometimes like people can step in and do like wildly different things.
Yeah, 100%. I learned my lesson with X-Force, X-Statics. Like, I'm open to change because it could be the next best thing that I've ever read. So,
were you out on that initially?
Oh God, I was so out on it. When I first saw the art on it and I heard kind of like the premise of it, I was like, this sounds so ridiculous. Like, who's gonna buy into this bullshit?
You love Allred though. I mean, was that like that was before you loved Allred?
I already liked Allred, but I just, for whatever reason, I looked at that as an X-Men book and I was like, there's no fucking way this works. And I was so thankfully wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I only read that in like an omnibus, like way, way, way later. And I can't even imagine like if I was reading X-Men books and all of a sudden like X-Force became this weird reality show book with all these different characters that I don't even recognize. But then Dupe would have probably changed my mind.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, because that was like the total difference between where I'm at now and where I was then is, we were in high school when that change happened. And so I remember like reading on God, what was it? It was like xfan.com or xfan something.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to get all the exclusives on that shit. And they posted that, and I was like, "What? This is not an X-Men book. No way." Meh. But I was way wrong.
Yeah, there you go. And now, a quick word from one of off-panel sponsors. You may have heard of Bad Idea, the experimental comic book publisher that's rolling deep with titles from electric talents like Matt Kint, Mark Russell, Marguerite Sauvage, and more, and doing it with oversized, ad-free, over-the-top releases you can only find at select comic shops around the world. There's no variants, trades, or digital versions either, so if you want one of their big Final 5 releases that are being released throughout the rest of 2021, make sure to visit badideacorp.com to find a comic shop near you or to pre-order a copy online. Do so soon because rumors are saying Bad Idea is over, so this might be your last shot. And now, back to the show. Okay, that was your 14th, right?
That was my 13th.
Oh no! Wait, so I'm out of... Did you just do 3?
I might have. I did Nightwing, Infinite Frontier, and TMNT.
All right, I'm doing 3. I'm getting caught up. I'm going to go to 12.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so number 14 for me is a Dark Horse graphic novel from Dave Baker, Nicole Gu, and Ellie Hall. It's called Everyone is Tulip. And it's actually kind of like fitting that this is coming after we talked about Ecstatics briefly, because this is about like this young aspiring actress named Becca and her she wants to be a star, and she gets like recruited into this crazy like performance art YouTube thing where she becomes a star, but it's for a very like weird reason, very performance art reason. And it becomes something, and it's connected to a guy who effectively is extremely toxic in many, many ways. And it's a really, like, the thing I really love about it is it's like a very smart look at how technology and social media and all those different things are affecting our relationship with just basically identity, but also with like, what we're willing to give up of ourselves. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think I've read a book like this ever. And I really like that about it. It's done, like, Nicole Gu's art is absolutely incredible. I love like the storytelling on it and just some of like the things that's done within the book to connect us with like the way that technology works and all these different platforms work. It's really fascinating. Yeah. I mean, it's a really wild book. I don't even know how to explain it without getting into spoilers, but basically, it's like closer to Ecstatics than it might seem on the surface, but it is really like, it's about basically like how fame can change people and can break people from their fundamental identity to the point where you don't even really know who the actual person is at that point. It's a great book. It's a really, really good book. Up next is something you mentioned earlier. It is Kaiju Max by Xander Cannon. Shockingly making the list for the, I think, 5th straight year. I don't even know. But it only had 4 issues this year. But one of the issues that was released was, I would say, my favorite issue of the year. It was the season finale to season 5. And then like that issue, it had a moment that was so perfectly up my alley and something I was so perfectly waiting for that a retailer, and I know a guy who owns a comic shop, texted me and was just basically like forewarning me that this was coming because he knew I was going to be like gaga about it. And sure enough, I was. And the book is actually about to end. It's only got 2 issues left. So I guess there was 5 issues this year. Never mind. I'm sorry, Xander. I totally slandered you. But anyways, there's only 2 issues left, and I don't even know how I feel about it ending. Like, I'm excited for it to end, but I'm also sad about it ending. I'm glad that Xander's getting to end it with the exact same plan he had in mind, basically. And if there's anyone that's going to stick the landing, I think it's going to be him. So I'm very excited to see that happen. Let's see. Up next, my number 12. I'm grabbing it. Okay. It is The Secret to Superhuman Strength by Alison Bechdel. It's a graphic novel. It's basically about Alison Bechdel is a very famous cartoonist, and it's basically about her. On the surface, I mean, I laugh because this is on the surface true. It's basically about her relationship with fitness, about like, exercise and all kinds of things like that. But it's also really just about her relationship with her family, relationship with herself, relationship with everyone in her life, and all through the pursuit of that aforementioned superhuman strength. And it's really interesting because Alison Bechdel, you might not know this, but Alison Bechdel is like one of the most successful like cartoonists like ever, basically. Her graphic novel Fun Home is like one of the most renowned books ever. And it was turned into like a Tony winning play, I believe, and all these different things. It's just like a crazy success. I've always liked her stuff, but this is the first book I really loved, which puts me into an unusual camp because I don't imagine I'm often like, I'm common in that regard. And I don't know. It's like the book, there was like so many cool things that she does with her cartooning. And there's so many, like the ways that she weaves the varying narratives together. Like there's a lot of like, stories about people that people of the past, let's just say that, and how it kind of connects to her mentality today. And she does a really good job of connecting everything together without making it feel like overburdened or anything like that, and also keeping like the same main narrative thread throughout. It's a phenomenal book. It's a giant beast. It's like a beautiful tome, but at the same time, it was one that like took a lot to get. I mean, it wasn't so long. It's not like I was reading like, I don't know, what's a really long book. I'm not reading War and Peace or something like that. But at the same time, it's just a tremendous graphic novel. And for me to say that it's my favorite work of Alison Bechdel is like quite the, I don't know, either controversial statement or quite the compliment because it's such a good book. But what is your number 12?
Number 12 for me is X-Men by Hickman and a plethora of different artists. It mostly makes it in based off the criteria, or off of the relationship they built off of X-23 and Sync, and her spoilers, I guess. I don't know. I'm way behind again. So it's probably not spoilers. Like their relationship and what she's forgotten now and he still knows. I love that whole emo feel of like he's just this, like he loves her and he knows all this about her and the shared experiences and she doesn't remember any of it. I love every bit of that. And then I love anytime Darwin gets brought on board because he's such a throwaway character that was obviously just so badass that you could reuse ad nauseum because he can do anything. He's not quite Maggot, but he's pretty friggin' sweet.
I gotta say, the Children of the Vault stuff was so amazing. I think it was only like 2 issues, but I absolutely loved that. And I also love the fact that, I don't know, I feel like they've done a really good job, both with this one and the Duggan series, to like unlock Sync. Because like the pairing of Sync with Darwin was so smart. And well, also an X-23, but I mean, honestly, it just basically had like 2 people who are completely like impervious to the rigors of time and I don't know, basically any harm because they'll just adapt to everything. And then X-23 who can survive basically anything because she's got like crazy, healing factor powers and everything like that. But like the way that they use Sync is just like so amazing. I feel like it's been simultaneously a massive upgrade for the character, but also maybe more of just like a proper understanding of what the character is capable of.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they're kind of getting an idea of what to do with him, whereas in the past, obviously, they'd killed him off, and they probably just didn't know what to do with him other than to make him kind of like a martyr character type business. But yeah, now I think they've got a much better idea of, what kind of character he can be and what, he can bring to the books. And that whole inner dynamic between like him and her, that's so X-Men. That's so soap opera.
Yeah, that is such a good beat. Great pick. What is your number 11?
Number 11 for me, and I talked about how this was going to be back on my list, surprisingly to me, is Suicide Squad by Robbie Thompson and Eduardo Pansica. I apologize. But I enjoyed the hell out of this book. I initially got on board because I liked the movie, the most recent one, and Peacemaker, and then obviously had what appeared to be Superboy in the book. So obviously I'm going to pick it up. And then to go along and kind of follow the journey of the book and find that, spoilers, it's not Superboy, it's Match. And to see how that kind of like plot twist happens, and to see the development of Match more of as a character was kind of fun, as somebody who's a big fan of like Young Justice and Teen Titans and things like that, and as a big Superboy fan. So it's been interesting to see this book pivot from a Superboy book to a Match book, and to see it just still consistently be appealing to me. I don't know. It's been a lot of fun, and kind of where they've gone with it. They brought in Major Force, which is a character who's just over the top and ridiculous. And he's kind of fighting for leadership as they go along, and fighting Ultraman and things like that. And obviously you've got Amanda Waller in the background doing what she does. I don't know. It's a great book. It's got a lot of dynamics going on. And again, I cannot stress how much I love the idea that Match gets a backstory and kind of gets a future to himself.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember Match at all. In Young Justice? Why don't I remember this character?
He was like the Superboy version, but he was like pale white. He was like the Bizarro Superboy.
Yeah, I don't remember him at all. You know, I really like Robbie Thompson's writing, so I really should check that out. Suicide Squad, it's fascinating. This is like the second straight Suicide Squad book where I'm like, you know, I like the people who are working on it, but I don't know if I like the Suicide Squad. Maybe I should just give it a chance.
Yeah, and that was my thing. Is I can't remember the last time I really read a Suicide Squad book besides like picking up old like Ostrander like back issues. You know what I mean? But again, with Superboy, at least what I thought was Superboy in the book, I was all about it. But yeah, fantastic creative team, creative book.
Number 11 for me is a short box release. It's called I See a Night by Zulia Vicente, and it is another common theme, Brandon, a sad comic. But it's also like, it's a very sweet comic too. It's about like this little girl named Olivia who keeps spying. Basically, she notices that there's a knight following her, and it's like a headless knight. And the little girl's name is Olivia. The knight's name is Sierra. And basically it's about their life together as Olivia gets older and older. And Sierra stays the same age because Sierra is a headless knight, and it turns out headless knights are not very good at aging because they're already not very good at being alive. Anyways, and it's about their very unique relationship and how you slowly start to realize what Sierra the knight is there for. And it's so well done. Like the cartooning in it is fantastic. The relationship between these characters is so good. And then like the final page is just, I don't know. It's just really, it's very haunting and affecting and sad, but also in like kind of like a, I don't know, in a, as good as sad can be. It's like a very good feeling sad, kind of. I'm not selling this very well, but
I was just gonna laugh. Like, I just love the idea of it being just like a sad happy.
It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet because you realize what the knight is there for. But it's a really, really well done book. I did not have any, like, it was basically what Shortbox would do. Shortbox puts together these collections of books, and you would basically, it's not a blind box, but you just buy this like collection that comes in a box, and you just get what's in the box. And in this one, I think there was 5 or 6 comics in there, and one of them was I See a Night, and I loved it. I didn't know what to expect, and it just blew me away. It is so well done. I almost considered it have it higher, but it was a really good year. But very good book. Number 10 for me is Grass of Parnassus, which is a book by Catherine and Stuart Immonen, and originally it was an Instagram comic, and then it was collected in full in one of like the best collections I've ever experienced in my entire life. It's from Ad House Books, and I don't even know what to say about this book beyond the fact it is just basically maximum Immonen. It's just like kind of Stuart Immonen's art style for Next Wave, but just done in the most bonkers fashion. And then like Catherine and him just like throwing out ideas and going wild. Basically, it's about like it's like the story of a very put upon spaceship, like the crew of a spaceship that's traveling from one place to another, and it is it's just an absolutely bonkers book. When I finished it, this is going to sound like a burn, but I don't mean it as such. Like I finished it and I was just like, what the hell did I just read? It was just like so different than anything I'd ever read before. I'd even read some of like the Instagram comic, and I still was just like kind of staggered by it. And it's just so well done. Like the art is incredible. Like the more I sit on it and kind of ruminate on it, the more I realize like how much I really loved it. I actually, we talked earlier about how like we weren't sure if we're going to make any moves on our list. This is one that moved up my list right before we recorded. It went from, I think, 12 to 10. And yeah, it feels like the right place for it. What is your number 10?
All right. So number 10 for me is a book that you touched upon earlier. And I do have to agree with some of the criticism on it, but it still didn't keep it out of my top 10. And that book is Sword. I think if anything you can say about it negatively is that it did tie into just about every single fucking thing that it could possibly tie into. But even having said that, I thought the ideas and things that Al Ewing and Sheedy, I can't remember the first name. Valerio Sheedy. The things that they brought forth, I thought were really a lot of fun. I love, again, it's another book that had great covers. You had great talent, even outside of Sheedy. You had, like Caselli came in for a bit there. Who else came in? Was it Bernard Chang was on there for an issue, right?
Oh, yeah. That was the issue with, that is my favorite issue of the whole series, the Manifold issue, where it's like, basically like this just like ridiculously amazing issue of like us seeing just everything Manifold is actually capable of. It's really cool going from like Secret Warriors to like the Avengers and New Avengers stuff to like this, and to see just like what that character is capable of. I love it.
Yeah, that was a great book. And Manifold, man, they've really made him like an established awesome character. But I love the idea of like this being the whole like fail safe for Earth with the rest of the universe. But I think unfortunately that is its downfall, and the reason it didn't make it further up, like I mentioned a moment ago, is just because it did have to tie into every single thing, which is just kind of the downside of everything being kind of, I don't know, like space and universal right now in the Marvel universe, it feels like.
Yeah, I could totally see that. It is a really good book. I really do enjoy it. It's funny. It's like, I actually read issue number 10, like with WizKid and everything like that last night. And that was what made me think, I was like, oh my God, I do really love this book. Like, why is this not on my list? And it like at least got the honorable mention. The one I will say that I actually, well, I'm not going to say what I cut because that would reveal something that's not going to be in my top 10. What is your number 9?
Ooh, now I just want to know what that is though. My number 9 is a book that coming into it, I knew I was going to love. There was no way this book could fail for multiple reasons. Number one, because the writer/artist of this book had put out a book previously that made it in my list last year, and I went gaga over it. And then that individual came in and hopped onto a book of a character I love that I'll read anything about. So we're talking about Daniel Warren Johnson's Beta Ray Bill. This book to me was so fucking good. The art, the story, everything. Beta Ray Bill made to look as good as Beta Ray Bill could be made to look, as far as being a character, as far as aesthetic, everything. This is such a great Beta Ray Bill story for anybody that loves Beta Ray Bill. This is him, coming through and fighting like a man and loving like a man in some issues, but not being a man. It's just overall, Daniel Warren Johnson came through with his kinetic energy and just destroyed this book.
That is such a cool book. I mean, like all the different stuff with like the ship. God, is the ship just named Ship? What is the name of the ship?
Yeah, Ship.
Anyways, like that. Well, no, it's Scuttlebutt. Is it Scuttlebutt?
Yeah, you're right. Scuttlebutt. My bad.
Yeah. Like all the stuff with Scuttlebutt, and then also with like the God, was it the Midnight Sword, and then having like Pip and Scourge in there. That is like such a awesome book. Also, just like building it off of the stuff that was happening in continuity with like his inability to switch back into his usual like look, rather than like his, the horse face version. I don't even know what you call it, like the classic Beta Ray Bill look. Yeah, that was a really good. I mean, his art is so incredible.
It's just so kinetic. The way everything flows together, the way like he almost has like, the action, like boom bang, it's all brought into the background type stuff, like just phenomenal.
I love the 2-page, like the double page spread that's just like a look at the ship with like the cutout.
Yeah, it's so stylized and fantastic. It's everything that I thought a Murder Falcon book could be if it was actually Beta Ray Bill.
Okay, number 9 for me is it's actually a series. There was 2 books that came out this year. One was Friend of the Devil. The other one was Destroy All Monsters. I'm just calling it the Reckless series. It's from Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, and Jacob Phillips. It's what those guys are doing right now, and it's the story of this guy named Ethan Reckless, who basically his job is like, I described it previously as he's a badass with a heart of gold, but also a badass with a heart of gold that will like beat up people or gain information about people in exchange for money, or in one very specific situation, an entire movie theater. And it's just basically about this guy getting mixed up with things that go south. A lot of his life goes south because it turns out that when you're dealing with criminals, criminal type things come your way. And it's just like, it's a really, really well done book. It's everything you would expect from Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' book. I love it. I mean, I kind of feel like it's weird. It's like with Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, they've been working together for so long, and I've had so many of their books on my list that I feel like I'm just complimenting them doing their thing. But I will say that like this series is cool because it's the first one that they've done that's been a serialized sequence of graphic novels. So they're able to kind of like stretch things and do things a little bit different and find new ways to do the things that they do. And there's a lot of little things that they've done throughout that have helped differentiate that book from other ones that they've done. I love it. It's so good. Next one, I gotta grab this beast as I talk about it. It's like I can't even open it while I do it because it's so big. It's my number 8 is Monsters, which is a graphic novel. Okay, Barry Windsor Smith. Familiar with Barry Windsor Smith?
Absolutely, Wolverine.
Yeah, exactly. So Barry Windsor Smith apparently has been working on a graphic novel for 35 years. It was like his magnum opus. It's this book called Monsters. It's basically, there's a lot of like Frankenstein to it. Apparently it was like originally a pitch about doing a Hulk story, and instead he took 35 years to make a 350-page graphic novel that is so maximum Barry Windsor Smith in terms of the art. It's like really like incredible stuff. Just like all ink work, all just, it's just an astonishing artistic accomplishment. The thing that really like astonished me about it was just like, I mentioned earlier about how I was like reading these like graphic novels and like I would read them right before bed and it would like stress me out. This was specifically the one I was referencing because it is like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's so big and crazy. Like this story, like, I mean, it is fundamentally is like a Frankenstein's monster type story, but it also is extremely grounded, and it isn't like the fantastical stuff that really like stressed me out. It was like the relationship stuff and all this stuff about like this character who has just had this like awful life and this cursed life, and like how he gets brought into this very terrible situation, and just kind of how his whole thing just kind of pans out. It's a really tough book to talk about because it really is an experience. It is a book unlike any I have ever read before in my entire life. It didn't finish in my top 7 because as much as I enjoyed it, being perpetually stressed out for 350 pages is not necessarily like my favorite reading experience. It's a remarkable accomplishment and I loved it, and there are so many good things I can say about it, but it was very stressful. It's a really intense book. It also has what I have to imagine is a record for flashbacks in a single comic, because it's like 350 pages, and I think 200 of the pages are flashbacks, and it works, and that is a credit to Barry Windsor Smith. But it is an astonishing accomplishment in so many different ways. It's a wild book, man. I feel like you should read it, but also I don't know if I want to wish that stress upon you.
Yeah, it sounds hella taxing.
It is. I would describe it as hella taxing. That is for sure. What is your number 8?
All right. Number 8 for me is a book that I enjoyed quite a bit, and honestly is the only book in my top 10 that comes outside of Marvel and DC. So spoiler. But that book is Ultra Mega by James Herron. That book was phenomenal. That book was just the kaiju curse and everything happening and the fights, just destroying shit. And then you also bring in kind of like the cosmic level to the kaiju-ness. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but you bring in more of that, and then just the absolute bloodiness and the value of that could not be overstated. The fights. It's a book that for me, it took a little bit for me to catch up on all of them, to be honest with you, just because I am so far behind. But it worked out that by the time I was able to get all of them, I was able to binge read them. And binge reading this book is by far, in my opinion, probably the best way to go about it. Like, I really want this book now in a hardback style book to put on my list or on my shelf so I can read it again. But this was a really solid book. It was everything that I would want from a book that's not obviously Marvel or DC or superhero, obviously leaning more into that kaiju feel to it. I don't know what to say. I'm kind of rambling on, but I fucking love this book.
Is that your first James Herron experience?
I want to say no, but I couldn't tell you what my other James Herron experience would be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, his art is like astonishing. He is absolutely one of my favorite artists. Like, there was back when we were at Multiversity, actually, because he did a lot of like BPRD stuff. Like, there's the NBA writer Zach Lowe used to write about this. This guy was a center for the Milwaukee Bucks, Larry Sanders, and he'd always write his name in all caps and an exclamation point because he was so excited about his like talent. And I got into this thing where I would do the same thing with James Herron because I was so excited about his stuff. I would just do all caps and exclamation point, and it just became a thing we would do in those Manulaversity reviews. And but anyways, Ultra Mega is great. Like, he does a really good job with it. I love all like the big kaiju stuff. His like kaiju designs are insane. And also, I just like the character work. It's got like a funky, funny energy to it that I think is really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. And, and honestly, if his main stuff is Magnolaverse stuff, I probably have not had much of an experience with him because that's still a giant, like, dead space in my comic reading.
What is your number 7?
Number 7 for me is Darth Vader by Greg Pak. And then also Raphael Ianenko. Again, I'm probably mispronouncing that. But yeah, that... So in a year where Star Wars books to me felt like they were completely enwrapped in like one giant bounty war hunter whatever crossover, like Star Wars, spoiler, does not make my list this year because of the crossovers. Honestly, it just got too tedious. But Darth Vader did a good job of staying outside of it. It's still kind of tied in, obviously, but it kept itself in a position where you were still gaining more off of what Darth Vader was doing on the outskirts of what was happening and how he was still trying to push forward to getting towards Luke and things like that. So for me, this book was pretty great and continues to be pretty great, continuing a tradition of like Charles Soule doing the book prior. I think Marvel has just done a really solid job of taking Darth Vader and putting him in a position to kind of characterize him more internally as opposed to just being Darth Vader, as he is from the external. And I hope that they continue on with it.
I gotta say, the thing that makes me the saddest about like reading comics for the last 2 months so I can catch up with all the stuff that I didn't read is this is not Darth Vader, but I got the new Thrawn book and I haven't been able to read it, and it bums me out because I really want to read that Thrawn book. That's my treat to myself tonight, Brandon, is I'm going to read start reading the final part of the latest Thrawn trilogy.
You gotta, honest to God, let me know how that is, because I'm really interested.
Have you read any of the current trilogy, like the Thrawn Ascension stuff? That's all like the Chiss stuff, like before he goes to the Empire.
If it's anything outside of what they call legacy now, yeah, I haven't really fucked with it too much. I tried to read some of the new High Republic or whatever that is, but I haven't gotten too far into that either.
You should read the Thrawn stuff. There's 2 trilogies now that are complete, and like one is like how Thrawn got involved with the Empire, and then the other one is pre-Empire stuff with Thrawn. And it's all written by the guy who did the original Thrawn stuff, Timothy Zahn. So I think if you liked the previous Thrawn stuff, you're gonna really like this stuff.
Oh, they brought back Zahn. That's pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'm a big Zahn fan. I haven't read the original stuff though, so I got to go back and read that after this. But anyways, my number 7 is one of my favorite comics ever. Is 20th Century Boys by Naoki Urasawa, and I always read anything Naoki Urasawa does because I love that book so much, and I love all of his stuff. But his like latest series is fantastic. It's called Azadora, and it is on my list at number 7. It is a manga series that is 4 volumes deep. It actually was originally slightly lower on this list, but I moved it up past Monsters just because I enjoy it so much. It is, I would say, very kind of similar to 20th Century Boys. It kind of feels like he's playing back on those beats, except for instead of that one being kind of an ensemble cast of friends that's built around a mystery, both stories are kind of about like apocalyptic futures and kids who grow up but also are involved with the larger story. This one is really about like a singular girl, Aza Asada, and how she like grows up and becomes this person that is very connected to the direction the world goes in. And it is super fun. It is like beautifully drawn because it's Naoki Urasawa and his gaggle of assistants that he works with. I absolutely love this book. I like just tear apart every volume I can get. Like the 5th volume isn't out yet. I don't even know how many volumes it's going to be because it's its current series. But however many it is, I will be more than happy to read it because it is an awesome, awesome book. But yeah, totally like just one of the most badass leads of the entire year. She's just an incredible character. Number 6 for me is a series from a very busy guy, Chris Samnee, with his wife Laura Samnee and Matt Wilson and Crank. It is Jana and the Impossible Monsters. It is a Oni Press series that Samnee is somehow co-writing and drawing while also drawing Firepower. I have no idea how he's doing that. But anyways, Jana and the Impossible Monsters is basically, I feel like you would really enjoy this. It's an all ages book that's about these 2 sisters, Jana and Rainbow, and how when everything basically one day, all of a sudden these big monsters take over their version of the Earth or whatever Earth it is or whatever planet it is. And it's about these 2 sisters finding each other again. Jana is a complete wild child, like that is super strong and basically is just like a superhuman. And Rainbow is like an ordinary girl, but a very thoughtful girl. And it's about the 2 of them basically finding each other again and then doing everything they can to find their dad and then also to find out what happened to the world and if they can do anything about it. And like Chris Samnee's, it's not that he doesn't feel invested on Firepower or any of the other stuff he's done previously, like Daredevil or Black Widow or whatever. It's just like in this book, it feels so precisely dialed into exactly what he wants because it is like his own thing that it's just so fun. And it's so, the storytelling visually is like so incredible. Everything about it is just maximum Samnee, and like maximum Samnee, it turns out, is a very good thing. Chris Samnee is one of my favorite artists, and he just kills it on this book. I love it. It really is. It's like Bone. Like it's. I think it's going to end up being almost like a Bone quality book, which is basically the highest compliment I can give a comic because I love Bone. What is number 6 for you?
All right, number 6 for me is a book from Marvel by a small-time writer that, again, I think he's already made my list once, but he might be big if this kid keeps coming up with what he's doing. And that's Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky and Marco Checchetto.
Kiketo.
This book is fucking fire. Everything from Daredevil going to jail to getting out and Elektra taking over the mantle. It has survived the big Venom crossover. What was that?
Key and Black.
King of Black. Yeah, it survived that. It was able to tie in and still be like consistent with the storyline, which is huge when you've got these books that have to tie in. I'm still confused as to why that book even tied in, but good job, Zdarsky. You fucking pulled that off. And then now you've got it to the point where it's coming to the end, and now we're moving into, is it Devil's Reign?
Devil's Reign, yeah.
Devil's Reign. I'm not quite there yet, obviously, because I'm kind of at a back end of it. But this story has been phenomenal. I love everything they've done with Daredevil in this. I'm not necessarily always a huge Daredevil fan, but this book has consistently kept me in the loop. This was on my list last year. I don't remember where it placed on the list, but I'd imagine it's got to be pretty similar here. But yeah, I love everything about like Elektra as a Daredevil, the woman without fear. I'm excited to see. I think there's like a miniseries spinning out, right? Isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited for that. I just think Zdarsky has really created a whole section of Devil's Kitchen or Hell's Kitchen and Daredevil's world in total, where you could really play around with a lot. Now you have all like the clones of Bullseye and shit like that. I think he's just introduced a lot of really fun elements.
You know, I would maybe say like Chip might be Marvel's best writer right now. Him or Al Ewing, I would say, are probably my two favorites.
Chip Zdarsky, where did this guy come from?
Seriously. I alluded to it earlier. This is my last cut. This is the one that I cut at the very last second.
Was Daredevil?
Yeah, I love Daredevil, but it got cut.
Wow, man. Yeah, it was a book that definitely was never even close to. It was more of a matter of where is it going to place in the top 10 for me.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's an amazing book. I don't know. It's just a really good year. It's just how it breaks sometimes. Okay, number 5.
Yeah, number 5 for me is Wolverine by Benjamin Percy and Adam Kubert. This has been a book that has been continually fun. I'm a big fan of 90s nostalgia Wolverine, so when you bring in Maverick and you let that whole thread go, I'm totally 100% on board. And then obviously anytime you've got a Kubert doing a Wolverine book, also on board to take my money. And then on top of not only are they doing the interiors, they're doing the covers as well. Double, triple, quadruple take my money. It's been a fun book. It's another one of those books that really like dives into putting Wolverine into positions that you know Wolverine should be in and that you expect Wolverine to be in, but you expect those results to be beautiful when it's Kubert book. And guess what? It is.
I've heard really good things about it. I dropped it like right in the middle of that Maverick arc, which really killed me because I'm a Maverick guy and I don't know. I'm a monster. I'm an absolute monster.
You disgust me, David.
Who am I if I don't support the Wolverine and the Kubert? Anyways, all right, my number 5 is it's a second book in a graphic novel series by this cartoonist named Brenda Thumler, who really is like one of my favorite cartoonists. It's incredible because she has like basically zero comics background and she came in and is just like a prodigy basically. Anyways, it's the sequel to a book called Sheets. It's called Delicates. And you know, honestly, it's a all ages book that's basically about this. There's the main character is Marjorie Glatt, who's like a girl in high school, and then like her best friend is a ghost who is a young boy who died in her town, and he rolls around and he's wearing like sheets, like, you know, very classic ghost look. And in this one, it features a new character named Eliza Duncan, who's another point of view character, and it's just everything that Brenda Thumler does in terms of encapsulating what high school life is like and like the awkwardness that comes with it and like the false confidence that can come with it for some people, and also just like people, you know, playing roles because it's what is expected out of them. Everything she does with it feels so real, but she's just such a good cartoonist that you can't help but be like completely enamored with everything that she's doing in it. Like the emotions are just like to the max, but also like one of the things I really love about what she does is she'll like take entire pages where it's just like There's no dialogue. There's no real characters being featured. It's just like texture. It's like a pacing break. And she does an absolutely tremendous job of immersing readers in the experience, but also making sure that they're taking it in at the right rate, that like it doesn't feel like overwhelming or anything like that. It's honestly like one of the most tremendous graphic novel series in like recent memory. It really is like something that I think anyone can connect with. Perhaps unless you're a bully, in which case it might be like too real for you, or either that or you're a bully and you're just like, that character totally rules. I love that character. In that case, you might be a jerk. My number 4 is someone that was mentioned earlier in this, Ram V and Felipe Andrade's The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. It's a Boom Studios series. It's a 5-issue miniseries that is so awesome, Brandon. I think you would really, really love it. It is like, basically the gist is that the goddess of death has been fired from her role because somebody is going to invent immortality, so her job is out. So they don't need her anymore. And so basically she goes down to Earth to live as like, she takes over the body of this person named Layla Starr, who had just passed away. And basically she has decided that she is going to preempt the person who is going to create immortality, preempt the creation by killing the killing the baby before it actually invents immortality. And needless to say, based off the fact that it's the many deaths of Layla Starr, the plan does not go well. And it is such a fascinating book. And the thing that I really love about Ram V, and you can see this in Swamp Thing too, is like you go into certain comics with certain expectations based off of like the way a story is set up. And Ram is so good at basically flipping our expectations upon us and like doing something completely different and turning this story that is fundamentally about death and also about like the pursuit of like giving, I don't know, it's interesting. It's like part of the problem with immortality is like sometimes it's like you almost need death to give life meaning in some people's minds. But in this case, that's exactly, it's hard to explain, but that is exactly what happens. And like the way that they tackle those themes and get into this like very interesting and very like emotional stuff is just like absolutely incredible. Also, like the entire 3rd issue is narrated by a cigarette, which sounds insane, but it absolutely works. And Felipe Andrade's art is incredible. I just love it. It is such a good book. It is one of the most singularly unexpected books of the year. When I read the first issue, I knew I was going to like it. I read it in advance of Ram coming on my podcast for the 300th episode of all episodes. And he was coming on to talk about Swamp Thing, I think. And I was just like, I only want to talk about this comic that's not even out yet because I love it so much. And anyways, it's such a good book. I think you'd really like it. What is your number 4?
I will definitely have to check it out. But to continue on with the Ram V love, my number 4 book is Catwoman by Ram V and Fernando Blanco with Jordi Belair doing colors. That book has been phenomenal. Everything about setting up Selena Kyle as like the queen of Alleytown has been phenomenal. It was another one of those books that got tied up into like Fear State or an event in general, but it was still able to like thrive and make itself worthwhile, throughout that process. And so I'm really sad to see this this era go, I guess. Again, I'm not big on seeing like the solicitations and stuff, but I did see like the first non-Rom V issue, and it's like Selena Kyle in the costume like hanging upside down from a stripper pole. So I don't know how we got so far from like her dominating Alleytown to being a stripper in a Catwoman costume, but I'm gonna go ahead and just appreciate the Rom V era while it lasted.
Yeah. I was going to mention that he was leaving. It's really too bad because it seems like he was doing really good stuff there, but also he seems to be very busy these days. So I guess it's understandable.
Rightfully so. I mean, the things he's working on are things I'm reading, so I'm all about it. It is interesting though. Like I don't know much again about any of this, but it seems like the things I've read for the most part are DC. Does he do any Marvel stuff at all?
He's writing Venom now. He's co-writing Venom with Al Ewing.
Ooh, okay. Well, maybe I'll have to rethink my stance on Venom then. All right, number 3, right? All right, number 3 for me is Hellions by Zeb Wells and Stefan Segovia. I fucking love this book. The X-Men Misfit team Misfit of Island Toys. No, that's not it either.
Island of Misfit Toys.
There we go. Of X-Men toys. And just the way they've bonded together and the way that this story has, like, it's played out in a kind of ridiculous sense. Like, this is a team that, even if you looked at it on individual parts, doesn't seem to mesh for whatever reason at all. But it doesn't work necessarily as like a Suicide Squad team either, because you're not killing them all off unless you are like Sinister. But I really enjoyed the way that the team does end up bonding, and I haven't made it to the end of the series yet because I'm kind of behind. But I'm interested to see where it goes, because I know the issue, it is ending very shortly here, at least as far as where I'm at. But I'm interested to see what they do with like Orphan and Orphan Maker and all this stuff. I don't know. It's been a great book. It's easily the best X-Men book that is on the market right now, which says whatever you want to say about the X-Men books.
You know, it's funny. It's like I always said that I wish that all the X-Men books had like kind of their reason to exist. Hellions is like proof that that might be a stupid idea, because it doesn't necessarily need to exist, but it's so awesome that it does. The Hellfire Gala issue, where basically it's just like all of the Hellions getting drunk and making stupid decisions, especially Nanny, is just comedic gold. I love it.
Yeah, it was obviously a top 3 book for me, but it's too bad the book's coming to an end. I wish there was like a spinoff or something that kind of will replace it, but I don't know if that's the case or not.
The finale is really good. I'll tell you that. I've read the final issue. I think it came out like a couple weeks ago, so it'll be coming to Marvel Unlimited pretty soon. But I will say that I don't know what these other books are, but I don't think there will be Hellions. I hope Zeb Wells is involved though, because I think Zeb Wells is like very underrated.
Oh, I would agree. He's writing the best X-Men book there is right now.
Well, and also like his Spider-Man stuff was really good. I think he's doing Spider-Man stuff right now. I don't know. He always seems like he's got one foot in the door in comics and one foot in the door of other things. And so I wish that he would write more comics, but I also know why he doesn't.
Seems fair.
Yeah. All right. My number 3 is the last superhero book. It is maybe a shocking book for you. I don't know, but my favorite superhero book and my number 3 book is Eternals by Kieran Gillen and Esad Ribic and Matthew Wilson and Clayton Coles. Absolutely just astonishing book. It is so amazing. Basically, I've never really particularly cared for the Eternals, but Kieran Gillen, like his plan for them has completely flipped them in some really shocking and surprising ways. Esad Ribic is one of my very favorite artists, so it's very easy for me to get on board with that. And with Matt Wilson coloring him, it's just like a perfect combination. And also, like, so one thing I really like about the book is the first arc was 6 issues, and instead of getting a fill-in and like just jumping straight over to 7, they gave Esad Ribic time to start drawing the next arc by doing 2 one-shots that tie into the book that you can skip if you want, or you can read them if you want. But either way, it's like the one tie-in was called I think Thanos Rises, and it was drawn by Dustin Weaver, and it was amazing. And then there was Kei-Zama drawing Eternals Celestia, and they all tie into the story that's taking place, which basically the first arc is all about somebody has murdered Zurus, and it's about them trying to figure out what's going on with that, and also why like the machine that like handles all of their resurrections and basically is the planet Earth, what's going on with that, because it seems to be breaking. Also, the narrator for the series is the machine, the planet Earth, that is actively breaking. So it is like the narrator is absolutely incredible. But yeah, I mean, it completely changed Eternals for me. I've always been very like not totally on Team Eternals, and now it's like this comic is, it's not my number 1, but I think it would be if I power ranked all the comics based off of when I would read them. Like, you know, it's like if I bought every comic in the same week, I think it would be the first one I read, because I just like can't get enough of it. I love it. Have you read Eternals?
Yeah, I read the first issue or two, and it just didn't do much for me.
I feel like if you kept going, you'd be really into it.
It's possible. I have a weird love-hate relationship with Kieran Gillen's work.
Sure.
There's some stuff I absolutely love, which is mostly the stuff that's not big too, and then yeah, I don't know, it's weird.
Number 2 for me is The Nice House on the Lake. It is a DC series, like a DC Black Label series, but it's James Tynion, the fourth, Alvaro Martinez Bueno, Jordi Belair, and Darren Bennett. And I feel like describing it would be to spoil it too much, but at the same time, basically, let's just say there's a group of friends who take a nice vacation together, and the vacation might coincide with the end of the world, and for some reason they're all okay, and it's all about them dealing with this very unique situation they find themselves in. This is a weird thing to say about why I love it, but there's like this, it's like when you read some comics, you can tell that to a certain degree they're kind of making it up on the fly, but there's like this precision to this book where it just feels like not only is this a story that's being told, but it's the only way it could be told because it's just the way that things fit. It's like less that these guys, or that all these people are making this book, like creating it so much as they are just happen to be the ones who know about this story that has to be told. And it is like Bueno's art is just like astonishing. And with Jordi, like honestly, Jordi Belair has had a remarkable year when it comes to colors. And this is like the best looking book that it's just one of the best looking books, period. It's just absolutely incredible looking. And all the characters are amazing. And all of like the, kind of thought that goes behind like the relationships and all of like the way that all these things are structured. I'm trying really hard not to say anything that's very spoilery because it kind of like takes some from it if you don't actually get like that original experience of figuring out how it's all working. But it's part horror story, part relationship story, part I don't even know what, a story that I've never read anything like before, but I absolutely love it. It is an absolutely incredible series. And yeah, apparently it's a giant hit. So I'm very happy for Tynion and Bueno and Belair and Bennett because that comic rules. What is your number 2?
All right, number 2 for me is, again, it's kind of funny. We seem to transition well together. Is James Tynion? How do you Tynion? Tynion. James Tynion and Jorge Jimenez, Batman, baby. That was my number 2. You got the whole Fear State thing playing out. You've got the Ghostmaker stuff. I think that Tynion. All right, Tynion did such a great job of adding to the Batman universe. As a Batman fan, I enjoy when like new characters are added to the sandbox to be played with, as opposed to relying on old time stuff. And I don't think anybody can say whether they loved his run or not can say that he didn't add to the universe, because he most certainly did. I'm pretty upset to see him go. I wish there was more there. I know he's off doing Substack or whatever that is. So maybe I should follow him over there. But overall, I'm sad to see it end. This is a book that made it last year as well for me. It's kind of an end of an era on a few books for me. But I'm really excited to see what he does from here. I'll probably follow him from here, even if that is Substack. But I wish he'd come back and do more Batman, but he won't. But Joshua Williamson's taking over next, so I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, and Jorge Jimenez is staying on board, but that is one thing I really like. I mean, I haven't actually read the Batman stuff, but it does seem like Tynion was very much invested in trying to bring new things to Gotham rather than like just kind of play back the hits. And like sometimes it's like, you know, you could watch like I know that you were a big Joker guy, but it's like at a certain point, it's like you've read a lot of the Batman and Joker stories that can be told with a current composition, but adding in all these other different characters, it can give it a new flavor in a way that's really interesting.
Absolutely. And if you can actually pull it off too, more props to you, because it's very difficult to bring in new characters to something, a mythology that's so old at this point, you know what I mean? To have people buy into it. But I think that's one thing he really, really did well, was bring in these new characters and give just enough information for you to be invested in them without maybe necessarily telling the full scale of their story, and leaving that up to future writers and artists. So,
Yeah. I suspect I know what your number one is.
oh, I want to hear you guess.
Amazing Spider-Man.
You'd be right. It most certainly is. Nick Spencer, baby. This is a title that made it my list last year. I can't remember where it finished, but it had to have been close to the top too.
I think it was number one.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is, again, like I said with the last one, this is kind of an end of the era type book, because I know it's transitioned over to Beyond now, but I loved everything about Nick Spencer's run. I loved the fun and the humor of it. I loved everything with Boomerang. I loved the idea that he could completely fix everything that was wrong about Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn's supposed relationship. The fact that he could fix that in his run on the way out says everything, and makes it a number one book just standalone based on that, because the whole Gwen Stacy, Norman Osborn sexual relationship with twins was just fucked up and not right. Not right. So thanks for undoing that, Nick Spencer. You're the man.
So are you going to read the Beyond stuff? Because I will say Kelly Thompson, who writes Black Widow, Zeb Wells, who writes Hellions, and Patrick Gleason, who's an amazing artist, I think are like the main three people on it. And that seems kind of up your alley.
Yeah, that's one of those books, Amazing Spider-Man, just because coming off of Spencer stuff. That's been one of those books that I do try to read as it comes out. So I have been reading that stuff. I tried to separate out the Nick Spencer from the Beyond stuff on my list, but the Beyond stuff's been really good too. It's been really solid.
That's awesome. Okay, my number one is, it was funny. The Knight's House on the Lake was effectively written in ink as my number one. I just seemed like it was going to be it. And then hilariously, I read this graphic novella in the bath of all places. I read in the bath, and as I was reading it, like I had to take this really long bath because I had to read like the whole thing because I was like so hooked on it. And it was like alternatively making me feel a lot of emotions, but also making me laugh and just like blowing me away with just the art and just everything about it. It's called No One Else. It's by R. Kikuo Johnson, and it is a graphic novel that's basically about this family in Maui. What happens is a tragedy befalls this family, and it's about three members of the family. This kid named Brandon, fittingly, and then also there's his mom, Charlene, and then his and her brother, Robbie, and basically what they do after this like tragedy befalls the family. And there's also a cat named Batman, which I do think is extremely important for me because the cat both looks like my cat, but also is named Batman, which I feel like ties it into all my other interests. But anyways, and it's basically about this family picking up the pieces and trying to figure out how to go on after this tragedy befalls them. But really, it's just like basically it's about how people deal with grief, and it's about how people deal with each other, and it's about how all these different things can connect, and about how history can kind of connect together, and how it can all lead us to a different place. And it is a remarkably done comic. I mean, it's so interesting because it's like a graphic novella. It's kind of like in a Far Side type format. And interestingly, it reminds me a lot of comic strips at times, where it's like, it typically has like a 6 square, panel structure to it. And the way that some pages are set up is they're almost like kind of one and done strips, where it's like there's a setup and then a gag at the end, where it connects into the central narrative, which often is quite sad. And it's interesting how it can balance all these different tones and like this sequential nature, but also this comic strip nature, and balance this incredible family relationship in a way that feels very universal. Honestly, like one of the things that really astonishes me about it is how much I see myself and my family, but also like even Amber's family in it. And it's, I think, because the way that Kiko Johnson approaches this is just, I don't know. I mean, it's so purely from his perspective that I think that it accomplishes like a universality that is really difficult to get to. Also, his art is amazing. I mean, it's just like staggering stuff by him. I absolutely love it. He's like a guy who is more known for doing like editorial illustration for like the New Yorker and things like that. And he's done 2 other graphic novels, and he has also done, like, he did one of the stories in one of the Strange Tales volumes that Marvel did back in like 2009 and 2010. And he does great stuff. But this book is just like, as soon as I finished it, I told Amber basically straight away that I was like, not only is this the best comic I've read this year, this is like one of my favorite comics I've ever read, period. I just love it. I love it so much. I've actually already read it twice. I actually went back to just like, refamiliarize myself with some details, and I ended up just sitting and reading it again. And I'm talking to him on Thursday for a podcast, so I probably will read it again between now and then. Anyways, needless to say, very big fan of No One Else. I feel like I barely explained it, but I love it so much. And also, the cat Batman is an absolute legend. Big supporter of Batman. So we're both big Batman fans here, just slightly different ones.
Hey, whatever gets us there.
Exactly. But that is it. Brandon, quite, you know what? I liked your list a lot. There's a lot of books in there I enjoyed. I feel like I got to get on some Suicide Squad stuff, but I really think that our hugely different lists, but also like very complementary lists, really underlines that this was a pretty awesome year for comics.
Yeah, I would agree, because there's quite a bit off your list that I need to check out.
Well, I will send you a list. Well, I'm sure we're going to get people who want to see both of our lists. We'll make sure to put that up on the Twitters. But Brandon, thank you so much for, as per usual, coming back for our 75th annual end of the year podcast where we count down our top 20 comics of the year. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, till the day I die.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with my pal Brandon Burpee. You can find him on Instagram at @VinylBurpee. Love Off Panel and want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating or review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel. And when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site, Sketched, at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content and its members-only forum. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by liking it on Facebook at /Sketched. That's SKTCHD. Follow on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Patrick Coyle, Isaac Warren, Scott Carpenter, Rent Narbs Studios Comics, Nicholas Palmieri, Capes and Tights Podcast, Klaus Van de Ven, Brian, Submit Industries, Raj Patel, Jack Mulqueen, Kyle, Carl Kerschel, Robert Masella, Elza Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Elliot Metz, Dr. Lou, Scott Hazelwood, Scott Buwan, Michael Tunk, Canadian by Proxy, Johnny Cannon, Bradley Rader, Carl Troy, Brandon DePillis, Patrick Brower, Declan Shalvey, Dan Garino, Josh Williamson, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, SB, Nick Bennett, Daniel Whitfield, Susanna Polo, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, AbductedTheComic.com, Andrew Carita, Matt Mahoney, Charlie Chu, Stephen Hall, Pensacola Pop Comics, Kim Eslin, Philip Myra, Christian Shelton, Kenny Porter, Chris Pachalo, Torrin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Carl Mizell, Danny Ollie, Paul Salates, Akil Wilson, Alex Demetriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Alistair Ross, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwan, Vita Ayala, Tara Ferguson, Dave Slusher, WMQ Comics, Akil Kokachi, Sean Pinello, Ken Heidelman, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, David Kelly, Robert Wilson IV, Nick Polito, Brendan Fletcher, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogart, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Mark Abnett, Michael Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comic Star in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's theme song just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.